People that work in the wedding industry. Have you ever seen a couple and immediately thought, this ends in divorce? Why? I'm a therapist, and marriage counseling a lot of times is unfortunately divorce counseling. If your spouse talks about it, go. People wait way too long. Photographing the groom, and you see his eyes light up when a guest arrives. You look over and it's a cute woman in a short dress. He smiles, walks up to the woman, picks her up and swings her in his arms. Best smile I captured of the groom all day. Marriage didn't last 6 months from what I've heard. I don't work in the industry. Just have my own personal story. My boyfriend and I got invited to his female coworker's wedding. We used to go dancing with her while she was engaged. Her boyfriend was stationed on the East Coast. Her fiancé didn't take kindly to a male coworker showing up to the wedding that we were invited to. And I even went to her bridal shower. So the groom sent his dad to threaten my boyfriend into leaving because they work in the same industry. I have connections. You'll never work in __ again. Even though he was retired. Groom also refused to dance with the bride except for photos. And she loved to line dance, so she was crushed. All of us who cared about the bride knew her. Groom was just a shitty guy. They lasted a year. I have a friend who is a wedding photographer, a rather busy and expensive one at that. So people usually book a year in advance. So she had a bride book the wedding date and pay the deposit. Nothing unusual there. The bride confirmed the venue. Also booked and pricey. And had the general discussions with her about the style that she wanted eat. They had regular meetings over the following months. But the groom was never there. A bit unusual, but not unheard of. So it's now 4 weeks before the wedding and they have the meeting to lock down all the details. But still no groom. My friend asks about him. And the bride mentions for the first time that she isn't engaged. Okay. Maybe she has a long-term boyfriend and is planning a surprise wedding. No. It turns out that she doesn't have a boyfriend or any guy in mind. But she prayed about it and God told her to trust that He will provide a groom for her. So, in the end, no groom magically materialized. And there was no wedding. So in that case, the marriage lasted 0 minutes and we were all sure that it wasn't going to work out. In fact, at the time we had some running jokes about her meeting a guy on a date and asking him if he wants to go to a wedding with her next weekend. Was at a friend's wedding once. It was at the Justice of the Peace. When the judge or officiant came around to if anyone doesn't believe in the union to speak up or forever hold your peace. 3 loud, "Oh," came shrieking from the back. It was my friend's 2-year-old son. Everybody was joking, saying it was a sign. Less than a year later the couple got divorced. It was the 3rd time the bride had hired me and all the guys had been carbon copies. When the bride and groom argued over why the groom's mother shouldn't get all money given to them on their wedding day. Yeah, that was a red flag. A few times as a photographer. The couple were usually fine. The families themselves were too different and combative. I don't work in the wedding industry, but I have a depressing wedding story. I have a friend who I grew up with. She was always gorgeous and incredibly popular with guys, and I always thought she was a great person. As I got older, I came to realize she was actually extremely toxic in relationships. And did better when she was single. She had been seeing a new guy for 2 months when one day I receive a wedding invitation in the mail. Knowing her history, it was a massive red flag for me. I turn up to the wedding. And it's at a gorgeous little backyard type wedding. It's spring and everything looks perfect. I greet her family. And it's like I've turned up to a funeral. Not a wedding. They're all extremely solemn, and when I ask about the groom, her mother rolls her eyes and says, "This is a mistake." Wedding commences, and as the bride comes down the aisle, her face is gray and like she would rather be anywhere else. They exchange vows while the bride does everything in her power to not touch her husband, to be even standing a solid meter away from him as they stand at the front. She actually cringes and looks away when he gets choked up saying how much he loves her. When the priest announces the kiss, the bride takes a slow step forward and presents her cheek for him to kiss instead of her lips. No one cheers. It's just an awkward shuffling of feet and a few scattered claps. It was the worst wedding I've ever been to. They lasted about 3 months before separating. Heard from a friend who did calligraphy that a bride came to get wedding invites, and the usual wording of bride Mer and Dad and groom Mern and Dad invite you to the wedding of bride and groom. Bride didn't want groom's parents' names on the invite. My mate did an invite mock-up called the couple for a check, and the groom lost it because groom's parents were the ones paying for most of the wedding. They didn't need any invites.